Right. Well, that's my thing today. And that kind of sets us up for what we're going to talk about next, which is that we are 8 months, folks, and 40,000 by official numbers. But tens of thousands, 95% of people, millions of people displaced. We are 8 months into that, being marched around to avoid bombs, trying to find food.
Hmm.
We are 8 months into that, and yet the Zionists' focus is on how they are victimized by manners of protesters. And the truth is, we have seen people attacked for their views on this conflict, and they have been Palestinians. Or in one case, they were a small child who a landlord thought was too pro Palestinian, right? Violence is out there. There is an emergency of it. And to pander to the the concerns of folks who are frankly like I don't know. Like it is a misapplication of focus in an ongoing genocide that is, running on anti-Arab hate right now. So there's a new thing. Speaking of that we have to really be concerned about, which is counter protesters. They did something unkind. Chuck Schumer has this tweeted out this today. Here it is. This is forwards, right? It's not backwards, but maybe we can make it a little bit bigger. Yeah. Chuck Schumer, I just visited the Nova exhibit site Friday and was incredibly moved to see the huge loss of human life on display. The protest outside and the kinds of comments made were nothing short of despicable. Now, it's a choice to focus on
Hmm.
both of those things. And I would suggest that they are more interested in emphasizing the protests outside, because if you actually look at some of the comments made, I have included one there. I'll just read it out for folks. Our unity will let us heal. The Gazans are all Amalek. They should be wiped off the face of the earth. Now, I do not think that sort of individuals' response to atrocities is the way to measure this. But I do think maybe a little bit of understanding for maybe Palestinian, when they say from the river to the sea, and that's viewed as homicidal. When Chuck Schumer is going up to things saying they are all Amalek, wipe them off the face of the earth, it is racist to accept one of those things as just a people's grieving, and the
Mm.
other as a savage expression of hate. And that is what we are told, not just by Chuck Schumer, but unfortunately, AOC also. And before I just want to preface this, like I'm not, people know, but just for folks who aren't familiar with Dave and I, like we are not knee jerk haters of the squad and
Hmm.
that whole project. Right, here's me just today supporting Jamal Bowman. Admittedly, that's for him possibly coming out against unconditional support for Iron Dome and in support of BDS, but also Ilhan Omar with Bernie Sanders there, urging the president's secretary to support Brazil's historic G20 initiative to establish global minimum tax on the world's ultra wealthy. I'm down for these projects, but it becomes a problem when we are doing things like this. And I think we'll explain why I think this is happening today. But anyway, AOC, the callousness, dehumanization, and targeting of Jews on display last night at last night's protest outside the Nova Festival exhibit was atrocious anti-Semitism, plain and simple. Anti-Semitism has no place in our city or any broader movement that centers human dignity and liberation. And I mean, just here's one Zionist responding to her and saying, you visited their encampments and hugged them. You said you admired them and they should continue what they're doing. Now you're surprised at the dehumanization and depravity on display from the very people you boosted only a few weeks ago. Pick a side and stop blaming both. I mean, I don't know if it's good politics or not to pick a side, but I would probably advise against not trying to ride both sides of this myself.
Mm.
And probably the bigger problem that I think, you look, uh, first of all, I think I don't care to get into it that much, but the signs that were really offensive were by like Orthodox Jews, and there was like a pretty big meltdown by a Zionist woman who had never seen an Orthodox Jew who didn't support Israel before,
Mm.
and that's kind of the problem here, which is that those people are not served well by what AOC is doing here, which is infantilizing, which is there's it. We need to well, here's friend of the show, Scarlet Red, points out a live stream that AOC did yesterday. AOC asked Stacey Barnett, who has worked for the United States Holocaust Museum that endorses the International Holocaust Remembrance Association's definition of anti-Semitism, which for folks who don't know, conflates criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism itself, and that is a position that you'll see that she continues to have. And the ADL, how to oppose the Netanyahu government without being anti-Semitic. And well, I'll just play a little bit of that video here so we can watch and respond to some of it.
Now, Stacey, to follow up on what you were talking about, how can someone starkly oppose the actions of the Netanyahu government while also avoiding anti-Semitism?
Look, if we want to be problem solvers, we have to be able to have respectful, evidence-based conversations that are totally free of identity-based biases. And if you make a judgment or an accusation about Israel that I think is wrong or unfair, I want to challenge you on the merits. I want to challenge your argument on the merits. And I think we can have those conversations. So Israel is a country like ours. It's subject to criticism and protest and tough language that may hurt my ears that people use to hold it accountable. And the parameters around that should be, how would we speak about this country, right? Political protest and criticism are the essence of democracy. And we also need to take care with that expression because we need it for our democracy. I want to just mention a couple of pain points in this moment, because if we can understand the harm some words do to other people, we can be attentive to preventing it. And that's a great beginning that will matter to a lot of people. So I talked about the conspiracy frame. And so whenever we hear about nefarious control behind world events, or now we're talking about the conflict, evil control of government policy by Jewish billionaires or Zionist donors, those are just like the George Soros accusations that Amy described, this evil puppet master,
I'm going to object to that. They're not like that. That is ridiculous, because there is just reporting, say on Mayor Adams in New York City, having a literal group chat with Zionist funders about coming down on the Columbia protesters. That stuff, it's not a conspiracy to note that. It's not a conspiracy to note that AIPAC is the number one funder of George Latimer against Jamal Bowman. It's ludicrous.
Or organizations like DMFI, right? Democratic Majority for Israel. I mean, Matt, you and I have been doing this for years, right? And before that, obviously, we follow the news or involved in different organizations. It is absolutely ludicrous to sit here and act like having a conversation about how the Israeli apartheid lobby in the United States plays a major role in the Democratic Party's politics. Do you know? And to a certain, and as well as in the Republican Party as well, right? It is just what is always true. Like, look, 100%. For example, like you can create like we can sort of condemn and recognize an anti-Semitic trope. Like one of those would be like Jews control the world or Jews control the government. Yes, that is an anti-Semitism. But saying that an organization like Democratic Majority for Israel or an organization like AIPAC that lobbies politicians to support the apartheid system in Israel, that's not conspiracy. That's not anti-Semitism. That is a political lobby lobbying for a certain agenda. That agenda is apartheid in Israel, apartheid of Palestinians. And to sit here, the demand is not to be careful about language or anything like that. It is put your head in the sand and ignore the role that these organizations and this political movement plays in American politics.
Yeah. I mean, there's a piece of the Washington Post from years ago about the dark origins of AIPAC, which was literally in the 1950s, the Kibbutz massacre, shortly after Israel was founded. Off the pretext off of an Israeli woman was attacked, they just started massacring people. And there was media there, like Time, and they're like, hey, your soldiers are killing people indiscriminately and like smoking cigarettes and laughing about it. And they're like, oh shit, we got to start lobbying. That's literally where AIPAC was founded. But there's some more of this. Let's let it go.
To save democracy and support causes he cares about. So if your criticism of Israel is trafficking and stereotypes, you're really in the bigotry zone. I mean, stereotypes kill. That's how the Nazis got the German people to live with this.
I also think this is pretty goddamn tone deaf,
Mhm.
frankly, when people are dying, but I'll save that for a little bit later.
So-called final solution. So we do the work all the time to avoid words that correlate with negative stereotypes, and we need to do that here. Second, empathy and care and inclusion cannot be limited only to Jews who reject Zionism. To me, those are part of my community, friends and colleagues, and progressive Jewish groups are doing more.
So a few things here. I don't think that every Zionist quite believes that about anti-Zionist Jews. In fact, I see quite a lot of pathologizing and quite a lot of, frankly, disgusting hate towards anti-Zionist Jews. So I'm glad that she includes them, but I think that's probably something for Zionists to work on.
I mean, just like a kind of important and powerful figure, the future president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, who we talked about last week on this program. I mean, how many Zionists in the United States are saying, "Oh, this person's not actually a Jew because I disagree, because they don't agree with me about the state of Israel," right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's a very good point. And again, like I will just say this about these kind of it's someone we talked about on Polite Conversations a couple weeks back, Matt, and which people should definitely listen to that conversation. Is like it really is amazing when we have to have these kind of what if conversations about like what if this happens or what if that happens when what is going on right now, and it just always needs to be centered and reminded. People need to be reminded of this: is that Israel is bombing, slaughtering, and starving millions of people in Gaza,
Yeah.
right? With no tactical end or strategic goal at this point other than mass carnage, devastation, and suffering for women, children, and civilians. It is just at this point, as you open the segment, Matt, to still be talking like this is just such an insult to all of the dead in Gaza.
Yep.
More good work than ever fighting anti-Semitism. But still, excluding Jews who believe there should be a Jewish homeland is excluding most Jews for whom it's just a feature of their.
So a couple things there. I don't mean to exclude those people from my human empathy, as she puts it. This is going to be a difficult time for them because they have to confront something, which is a problem, which is that their religion has been taken over by nationalists. Now, that could not have happened without the horror of the Holocaust. That doesn't mean that it is positive or that it should be true. And that what she says at the end there, that a lot of Jews feel tied to Israel as a matter of identity. That is not an essence of Jewish people. That is a historical contingency that represents an issue that needs to be confronted. And we do need to extend empathy to people because this is going, but what we don't need to do is tell them that they're right and the anti-Zionist Jews are wrong. Those people, the path is there. There are plenty of models to lead people out of that. And what I think the problem is here is that they are being led back into a nationalist solution for an issue, which is, I don't know, a problem. That is, and I really resent people who think, because what, you go ahead. Yeah, jump in.
No, I mean, I resentment. I mean, like this is something that I'll say, and I know that we have more here that it's probably going to make me see even more red than I am right now. But I'll tell you this: there is this kind of like therapy language or feeling language that this whole thing is set up about is can be so evil, and we've seen it be used to justify. I mean, in this case, to excuse support for the horrific and the inhumane, but to support and to sweep under the rug all kinds of serious things. Why is this kind of language and conversation so wicked? Because it decontextualizes everything, right? So instead of having a very blunt conversation, right, which is what this person is saying, is like, hey, for some people who live in America, who are Jewish, they think that it should be allowed that there is a state that is an ethno state that was created through mass expulsion of people, that
Yep.
maintains racist laws, that holds people in concentration camps, and then and when they get mad or upset because of that group, they can just bomb, slaughter, kill, and starve them. And that's just what they feel. And if they feel that, we have to respect the way that they feel, right? Because it's very important to them that they be able to support this kind of thing, which is an absolutely ludicrous position to take. People can believe whatever they want to believe. But if you believe that there should be an ethno state, if you believe that ethno state can engage in genocide against people, you are wrong. You should face social consequences for it, and your political movement should be defeated. And it's just absolutely ludicrous to talk in this way, right? It pisses me off so much because it completely decontextualizes it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, we have to understand both sides. No, we understand the other side well enough, friend.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, let's finish it. There's a little bit more.
Part of my community, friends and colleagues, and progressive Jewish groups are doing more good work than ever fighting anti-Semitism. But still,
kind of low-key shade as if they weren't doing good work fighting it before. But anyway, go ahead.
Excluding Jews who believe there should be a Jewish homeland is excluding most Jews for whom it's just a feature of their identity. And that's in our civil rights legal system and our civil society, it's discrimination. And there's a zone in which we don't agree exactly the nature of the overlap between anti-Jewish hate and anti-Israel criticism. We don't have the exact identical frame to characterize it, and Jews disagree on some of these finer points, but we all agree that it's harmful. So let's just call it like eliminationist. Whatever the intent, we're all reading 20 articles a day. It's telling us and teaching us how provocative, scary, and hurtful some language is. Envisioning a world without a Jewish homeland is terrifying for a group of people who've been banished and expelled. And calling every single Jew who yearns for a refuge or a homeland a racist, that causes harm. It's not in service to any future that's safe for Israelis and Palestinians. And it undermines our ability to live in the kind of community of support we want and we need.
I mean, Lord, truly help us all.
So banished, right? I wonder who's been banished lately. Like, do you think Palestinians have any idea what that's like? There is just no, it's just no self-awareness at all. And let me make something clear. That supposed confusing area of overlap where you are anti-Israel or anti-Semitic does not exist. That does not exist. There is it's it can't be agreed upon because it's a faulty concept. If you support Israel, what you support is you support a demographic majority, the construction through ethnic cleansing and maintenance through genocide of a Jewish majority. That is no different to me in 2024, even though I understand the justification, the sort of salutary justifications for it in the past. That's no different to me than wanting to prioritize a white demographic majority in America. Those things can only be done through violence. And that's why violence is happening, because that's what's happening in Palestine right now, is that Netanyahu and Likud and the entire coalition, including Labor, they know that they want that entire piece of land, but they can't just take it if there's going to be that many Palestinians having that many babies in it, because that, you see how sensitive they are to a word like apartheid. But that's why all these groups like Amnesty International are saying, yeah, it's apartheid, because we all know that that's your real borders. And though you're keeping those people down inside it. And so they got a problem. And what their solution is to try to bomb and scare people out of it. So there's not, but that's that the real issue. That's why you're never going to get rid of Hamas, because you're not going to be able to drive the Palestinians out like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, there's no strategic or military goal here other than devastation, and yeah, I mean, this kind of language is bad. I don't know. I mean, there's plenty more in that. I don't know if we had any more, but there's plenty of stuff, and we've been pretty, I think, vigilant about calling out some of the dangerous things that have happened. Because look, there's a lot of people who want to take advantage of this kind of moment. And do you know who is really helped out by this kind of bullshit logic that we just heard? Is actual monsters and actual
Yep.
anti-Semites. Because when you start describing and saying, hey, when you start claiming that, like, hey, opposing genocide means that you're an anti-Semite, well, what kind of dynamic does that create for actual anti-Semites? Like, oh yeah, look, they're calling you an anti-Semite, they're calling me an anti-Semite. It's been a boon for actual villains and monsters that do exist out there, to muddy the water, to try and confuse people about this. Because what is happening and should be opposed is the mass slaughter and killing of Palestinians, and mudding the water in the way that folks have been doing is extremely dangerous, because it creates opportunities for the very real and dangerous anti-Semitism to thrive.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I hope so. Here's some explanation of to why it's happening now. Well, Jabal Momin got some polling and is getting crushed by APAC's #1 fund recipient George Latimer,
Psycho. Hmm.
and so you get stuff like this, and AOC gets this headline here, which again, like I think it's I don't expect leadership from elected representatives, but I think the
I mean,
problem is like
this is extremely disappointing,
don't
frankly.
do harm, right? And so this is Times of Israel. AOC slams anti-Semitism on left, says when Jews threatened progressives are reminded. And I would just recommend people go check out the Labor Files documentary, 3-part, multi-hour
Hmm.
documentary on what happened to Corbyn the second that he took over, and the bad faith attacks. Not just on issues within Israel, but supposedly progressive issues, and treating them as if they are good faith critiques when they are actually just trying to take you down. Because the people that she talked to supported that definite, like I said, that definition of anti-Semitism that was they're trying to codify into law as hate speech if you criticize
Hmm.
Israel.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's. I'm sorry, like, seeing this from AOC is extremely disappointing. When there has been a lot of exciting and inspiring things from the quote squad, in sort of getting this moment. Right, this is a huge step backwards. It's truly amazing, frankly, to be having this kind of conversation. Hell, I guess at this point we sort of foreclosed the opportunity of thinking about all the folks who are being killed. But just what's happening in this country. I mean, Matt, what happened in your neck of the woods at Columbia. Here at the University of Texas, the University of Texas is now pursuing disciplinary actions against young students who stood up and protested against genocide in Gaza, right? And it
Yeah.
pisses me off to no end when we have, again, these kind of abstract conversations. It's the most classic thing in this bullshit mystification that comes in these kind of conversations, where it's like, well, if this happens, then that could be bad, or blah blah blah. When on the fucking ground, what is happening in the United States of America right now is young people are getting the shit beaten out of them by cops. We're having young people being doxxed by billionaires. We're seeing significant, like, serious threats, death and beating of Palestinian and Arab Americans in the United States of America, and yet we have to have a bullshit conversation to placate somebody who says, "Oh, it really hurts my feelings when people say that I can't get my ethno state." When people say that I shouldn't have an ethno state, it makes me feel like I'm not included in this group. Shut the fuck up. You're not
Yeah.
included. Get the fuck out of here. If you're seriously somebody who thinks that it's okay to expel people, if you think it's okay to create an ethno state, then no,
Yeah.
you're not a part of this fucking movement. And the demand that the movement then say, like, oh, actually, yeah, we're going to be tolerant of ethno nationalism now, um, is an
It's
absurd and silly demand.
it's fucking sick that yeah, those women, I don't know if they've ever been to Israel, but they could go and they could live there, and people who own still have the keys to the house that they were expelled from can't. Why? Because of their identity. So yeah, we need to be really protective of identity around here. Like maybe there's been a little bit too much of that.
Mm. Yeah, no, way too much of that. Yeah, I mean, it's truly, truly, um, you know, to give the media those headlines, Matt, that you just shared, and there's plenty of them, for nothing. Because you know who's not going to stop opposing Jamal Bowman and AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Cory Bush, is
They won't
DMFI,
change a
APAC.
bit.
They won't change one fucking thing. So all that comes out of this, no political benefit. It would be cynical if that were the case. But you're not even going to get that. And just more and more fodder for our enemies to attack us. A real break with with solidarity there. Really disappointing.
Yeah, it can't be tolerated. So come on, AOC. I know you follow me. You follow me on Twitter still, so I know you saw those tweets.
I really wish. I mean, and it's frustrating in the conversations of what's going on. I'm not going to get. We try not to get into internal DSA stuff, but about things like national endorsements, which are important questions, to be doing things like this right now is just really truly boggles the mind. Frankly, I think everybody knows better, which is why this is so frustrating.